for the money that they're giving us. So part two, investment and incubators. There are loads of options for where we get our cash from, okay? So the seed stage is kind of day one when you say, I have an idea, let's do this crazy thing. Basically very, very early at seed stage, and we don't have very many options normally. The very first thing we start with is founders, family, and friends, where we can put a little bit of our money into building a very basic product, and we see if that impresses people. We have angel investors who you may have some of in your country, but typically you have a few people in each city who have some money. Maybe they built a company before themselves, and they think, I'm going to take a bet on these guys. Now, they might give you some cash. And then later on, you have angel groups, which are when these guys get together. Venture capital. So venture capital is, you guys might be familiar with VC. It's sort of a more formal, more structured company that takes a really detailed look at your company and works out how much they think it's worth. And they'll typically spend quite a lot of time looking at you to figure out whether you're valuable. And because of that, they want to make sure they put quite a lot of money into your company because otherwise it's not really worth it. So what we're going to look at are accelerators and incubators, because wherever you are in the world, it's very, very likely that you can get yourself into an incubator. These guys are designed specifically to take crazy people with crazy ideas and help them look far less crazy so that they can appeal to the venture capitalists a little bit later. So they're the closest you can get to formal VC. And their main job is to get you from idea to some funding. And around the world, you have like Y Combinator, which is at the very top here, the big Y. So you guys might have heard of that. This is just a selection of some of the very best incubators according to PR.com. There's a global ranking which is done each year, and they look at the success rate of the companies in these incubators. Techstars is big and international, and then maybe you've heard of some of the others here. One of the really important things you should think about when you were thinking, okay, I want to go to an incubator, is that on one hand, you have companies like YC or Y Combinator, and they look really, really great, but they're not focused. They'll just do any kind of early stage support. So you could be building a new medical device, or you could be building some new food. They'll support you because they're very big, but they don't have very detailed networks. So on the other hand, you have very specialized incubators like IndieBio down the bottom left here, which is based in San Francisco, and they specifically focus on biology. So if you're building some hardware, they're not really interested. If you're building food, they're not so interested. They really want something that leverages a really modern, really cutting edge biological technology. So they're really good because they can connect you with the right investors and the right networks. Typically, you have to decide, do I want to look really good, or do I want to have really, really good support? And there's a balance between those. Most sit somewhere in the middle. You'll find that the big ones also, they're open to international applications. So you could go to Y Combinator from pretty much any country in the world. But if you're building something that you think will operate in your local market, so if you're in Indonesia at the moment and you want to sell to customers in Indonesia, maybe you're going to need distributors and partners who are also in Indonesia. And Y Combinator, because they're in San Francisco, they're probably not going to help you very much with that. So it's worth considering as well, do I need a local incubator, which maybe not very many people have heard of, but I know it's going to be really valuable for me. So there's this trade-off. You need to consider that. Typically, what an incubator will give you is somewhere to work, some connections, a really good network. As I said, they make you look much more mature typically, or much more advanced than you actually are. So they take your crazy idea and they believe in it. And that's very valuable for getting you as far as round A or round B, which is your later investments, where you start to get more money and you start to hire more people. They usually last about 6 months. So you'll go and work somewhere, like in San Francisco, for 6 months. And at the end, there's something called a demo day, where you've built your product and you put it in front of a big room full of investors. And you hope that maybe 10 or 15 of these guys think that what you're doing is really interesting. They want to have a conversation with you. And this provides you with that kind of that starting point where people are competing a little bit to be able to give you money. It's really valuable, actually, for how much of your company you give away. Because if we go back here to look at how much you're giving away, you don't want for your 400,000 in seed to give away 50, 60, 70% of the company. You want to keep as much as you can. So it's important that these guys give you access to lots of investors so that they don't take very much money and the value of the company is a bit higher. Sometimes they'll connect you with grants as well. So they might be able to help you appeal to your local government. And what they want to do typically is give some money back to their own investors. So they need to believe that you're going to get more valuable than you are today. And they're not going to be with you forever. You know, it's not like a bank. They won't give you a loan until you pay it back. Typically, they'll go on your journey with you for about 4 or 5 years. Incubators, as a last note here. But if you're new and maybe you've only built some personal projects before, but you haven't built a company, or even if you've built one company, but it hasn't been like Uber or Facebook, then they're very, very good because they give you that credibility. If you're Mark Zuckerberg, maybe they're not so valuable because you're already able to get access to any resources you want. So they're very good if you're quite early. I think normally I'd love to take some Q&A here.